All right, let's get right into it. The Supreme Court is, right now, on the verge of making a decision that could literally force the U.S. government to issue the single biggest refund in American history. And this isn't some abstract corporate legal battle, it's a financial time bomb. And the crazy part is, whether you realize it or not, you've already paid for it.
That number you're looking at, $150 billion, that's how much the U.S. government might have to pay back. And soon, like in the next few weeks. This is all money that was collected from tariffs that not one, but two federal courts have already said were illegal. The kind of financial chaos that could follow this, well, it's almost impossible to wrap your head around.
And if you want to know just how bad this crisis is on the ground, look no further than this. We're not just talking about big, abstract numbers. We're talking about small businesses so desperate for cash and so convinced they'll never see a full refund that they are selling their multi-million-dollar claims to hedge funds for literal pennies. Think about that. Taking a 91% loss just to keep the lights on.
So how on earth did we get here? To really understand what's happening, we need to go back and see how this $150 billion time bomb was even built in the first place. It all kicked off with a huge legal gamble that is now just ticking away, waiting to explode.
Let's put a face to this problem. There's a toy company called Kids 2. They paid millions of dollars because of these tariffs. Now they have a solid legal claim to get all that money back. But here's the thing. They couldn't wait. Rent, payroll, paying their suppliers, that stuff doesn't pause for a Supreme Court ruling. So they did what they had to do. They sold their entire claim to an investment fund for just 23 cents on the dollar, taking a massive loss just to get some cash flow to survive.
So now let's get into the lawsuit itself, the legal battle at the absolute heart of this mess. And it all boils down to one simple but unbelievably huge question. Did the president completely overstep his authority by using the wrong law to impose these massive taxes? The law at the center of all this is called the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEPA. Now, what's fascinating here is that for 47 years, presidents have used this law exactly as it was intended, to slap sanctions on genuine threats like Iran or Russia or terrorist groups, for freezing assets and blocking financial transactions.
But that is not what happened here. For the first time in the history of this law, IEPA was used not for targeted sanctions, but for massive, sweeping tariffs on everyday consumer goods. The administration basically declared that trade deficits were a national emergency, a pretty unusual definition of an emergency, and used that declaration to justify billions in taxes, something no president had ever done with this law before.
And from there, things just escalated fast. The tariffs get imposed in February. By May, just a few months later, a federal court has already ruled them illegal. By November, the whole thing is already in front of the Supreme Court. And now companies are facing this totally bizarre deadline. They have to register for electronic refunds by February 6th, even before the court has said any refunds are actually happening.
And it's really important to get this straight. This isn't some fringe legal theory from these companies. The government's argument has already been shot down, twice. The Court of International Trade and then the U.S. Court of Appeals both looked at this case and said, unanimously, that IEPA does not give the president the power to do this.
Okay, so this might all sound like some high-level legal fight between giant corporations and the government, but trust me, this has a direct and immediate impact on your personal finances. This whole thing hits you right in the wallet.
Let's just be perfectly clear about one thing, because it's the most common myth out there. Despite what you might hear, tariffs are not paid by foreign countries. They are a tax paid by American companies that bring goods into the country, and guess what? That cost gets passed directly onto you, the consumer. Every single time you went shopping, you were paying for this. These tariffs made everything more expensive. Your groceries, your phone, your car, your clothes, your kids' toys, everything. Some studies on past tariffs showed they cost the average American family about $1,000 a year. And these tariffs, they're even broader.
And the impact goes way beyond just the price tag on the shelf. This kind of massive economic uncertainty, it puts jobs at risk. We're talking retail, manufacturing, shipping, you name it. And when the Supreme Court's ruling finally drops, it's going to cause huge swings in the stock market, which directly affects any investments you have, including your 401k.
So we've seen how this hits your wallet, which means the stakes for this decision are incredibly high. What happens next is completely in the hands of the Supreme Court, and they basically have three ways they can go. The problem is, every single one of them creates its own unique kind of crisis.
So path number 1, the justices can strike the tariffs down completely. Path number 2, they can uphold them and say they were legal. Or they can choose a very, very weird third option, a legal trick known as the sunburst twist. And yeah, it's as strange as it sounds. Let's break down what each of these would actually mean.
Okay, so if the tariffs are struck down, boom, the government suddenly has to find $150 billion it absolutely does not have, creating total budget chaos. If the tariffs are upheld, it greenlights a massive expansion of presidential power, and costs stay high for all of us. And then there's the sunburst option. This is where the court says, yep, the tariffs were totally illegal, but then rules the government doesn't have to pay the money back. So the companies were right all along, but they still lose.
You can already see the administration sending signals to the court, basically trying to wave them off, ordering a full refund. The Treasury Secretary himself said that processing these refunds would be a complete mess and almost impossible. Now, that isn't just an administrative complaint, that's a legal strategy. It's telling the court, hey, if you rule against us, you're going to cause way too much damage.
And all of this brings us to the biggest question of all. Because this case, when you really get down to it, isn't just about the money. It's about the fundamental structure of our government and the entire future of presidential power.
See, the Constitution is crystal clear. It gives Congress the power to regulate trade. The companies say that's the end of the discussion. The administration, though, argues that the text of that IEPA law is so incredibly broad, it lets the president regulate pretty much anything just by declaring an emergency. So the whole case really boils down to this: who gets to decide our country's trade policy?
And this, right here, is why this case will matter for decades. If the Supreme Court sides with the administration, it essentially gives a green light to any future president from any political party to declare a national emergency over almost anything: climate change, immigration, income inequality, you name it, and use that to impose their own economic policies, completely bypassing Congress.
This ruling isn't just about tariffs. It's going to reshape the presidency for the next 100 years, and it forces all of us to ask a really fundamental question about the balance of power in our government. Because as we wait for the court's decision, that $150 billion question is really about this: who truly holds the power?